Hello everyone. Before we continue to the part 2 of this interesting story, please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. This is an important reminder that this is a true life story that actually happened to someone in Lagos. It's not a fiction, so I recommend you to share this story to your family and friends, and to every parent you know that owns a swimming pool in their home. One evening after Ade returned from work, he was tired. He opens the door, but nobody was at the living room. Then he echoed, "Priscilla, Daddy's home." Priscilla runs to him, feeling so excited, and said, "Daddy, I missed you so much." Ade hugged her and replied, "I missed you too, Princess. What did you do today with Mommy?" But Priscilla did not hesitate to answer. "Mommy was by the pool with her phone. I played by myself mostly." Ade was concerned, looking around as he asked, "Priscilla, where is your mother now?" Priscilla quickly answered, "Mummy is still by the pool, I think." Ade went to the backyard and finds Femi lounging, phone in hand. The pool was still full of water. He was frustrated, and with disappointment in his face, he said, "Femi, you promised to drain the pool after using it." Femi startled for a moment and replied, "Oh honey, you scared me. I was just about to do that." Ade angrily replied, "The pool has been full for 3 days straight. What if Priscilla had wandered out here?" But Femi wasn't bothered about that. She said, "Relax, Ade. She knows not to come near the pool. Besides, I've been watching." Ade replied, "Watching? You've been on that phone for hours." Ade was angry and disappointed at that moment as he left the backyard. His patience was wearing thin. He had given his wife everything she asked for, yet she seemed more distant from their family than ever. But in African culture, when a man faces troubles in his marriage, he seeks the wisdom of his elders. Ade took his concerns to his mother, Mama Adebayo, a woman of great wisdom and experience. Ade drove to his village with his wife, Femi, and his daughter, Priscilla. While he got to his father's compound, he saw his mother outside, taking fresh air from the natural breeze, while also eating the meal that she freshly cooked. Ade and his family came down from his car and said, "Ah, Mama, you're really enjoying yourself," and his mother replied, "Welcome, my son, come and join me. I just finished cooking this for you and your family, because you told me that you were coming to visit me today. I hope all is well, my son." Ade replied, "Yes, Mama, all is well." Then his mother told them to sit down, while she carried Priscilla on her laps. Ade and his wife quickly washed their hands to join his mother to eat. After he was done eating, Ade said, "Mama, it's been long since I ate such an amazing food. I miss eating your food." But his wife Femi looked at him and smiled. His mother laughed and said, "You're welcome, my son." His mother looked at Ade's face and see that he is worried. Then she asked him, "Ade, what is it? Tell me what troubles your heart." Ade replied, "Mama, I don't know what to do about Femi. She's becoming more careless each day. Yesterday I came home and found Priscilla trying to cook for herself because Femi was too busy with her phone." Mama Adebayo shook her head slowly and said, "Femi, you need to learn the value of responsibility. A mother's first duty is to her child, not to her phone." Mama Adebayo directly faced her and said, "Femi, my daughter, come and sit this side. We need to talk." Femi replied, "Yes, Mama." Mama Adebayo began to speak to her. Then she asked her, "A woman who neglects her child for worldly pleasures is like a farmer who ignores her crops to chase butterflies. What will you harvest when the season ends?" Femi defensively replied, "Mama, I take good care of Priscilla. She's healthy, she's happy." Mama Adebayo told her, "Health and happiness come from a mother's attention, not from money. Your daughter needs your time, your care, your presence." Then Priscilla quietly said, "Grandma, sometimes I get scared when Mommy doesn't answer me." Everyone looks at Priscilla. Silence fills the room. From the mouth of a child came words that pierced every heart in that room. But would they pierce Femi's heart enough to change her ways? 1 month later, an emergency business trip came up, and Ade was packing hastily. After packing his luggages, he went to Femi and said, "Sweetheart, I have to leave for London tonight. There's an emergency with the bank's international partnership. I'll be gone for a week." But Femi was not looking up from her phone. She was so concentrated, scrolling through social media, and she responded, "Okay, honey. Have a safe trip." But Ade stopped packing his luggages for a moment and said, "Femi, look at me." Femi reluctantly looks up. Ade said to her, "I need you to promise me you'll take proper care of Priscilla. No parties, no distractions. And please, please remember to drain the pool every time you use it." But Femi replied, "Ade, you worry too much. Priscilla and I will be fine." Ade went to his daughter, kneeling beside her, and said, "Princess, Daddy has to go away for a few days. You be a good girl for Mommy, okay? And remember our rule about the pool." But Priscilla responded, "Never go near the pool without a grown-up." Ade was impressed with her answer and responded, "That's my smart girl." He kissed her forehead and said to her, "I love you so much, my princess." Priscilla responded back with tears in her eyes, "I love you too, Daddy. Come back soon." Ade left for the trip. But if only Ade had known that this would be the last conversation he would have with his precious daughter, while she was still alive. 3 days after Ade's departure, Femi decided to host the pool party of all pool parties. She invited all her friends, hired caterers, and turned her home into a place of loud music, laughter, and luxury. In the midst of the party, her friend Juliet said, "Femi, this party is amazing. Your pool is absolutely gorgeous." Femi proudly replied, "I told you girls it was worth the wait. Now we can party at my place anytime." Then her other friend, Kimmy, asked, "Where's little Priscilla? I haven't seen her." But Femi replied, "Oh, she's inside watching cartoons. She's fine." But was Priscilla fine? While her mother partied with friends, the little girl sat alone in her room, hungry and thirsty, listening to the loud music and laughter that didn't include her. Priscilla was all alone in her room, looking sad and lonely. She held her teddy bear and said, "Teddy, I wish Daddy was here. He would play with me and make me food." The party continued well into the night. The women danced, they laughed, they drank, and they swam in the beautiful pool that was meant to bring the family together, but had instead become a symbol of separation. As midnight approached, the party began to wind down. Femi's friends were exhausted from hours of celebration. Femi's other friend Betty was yawning. She looked at Femi and said, "Femi, this was incredible, but I'm exhausted. I think we should call it a night." Femi was also tired but happy. She then told her friends, "You girls can sleep here if you want. The guest rooms are ready." Her friends start gathering their things. Betty then said, "Don't forget to clean up this pool area. It's quite a mess." Femi, already feeling exhausted, then replied, "I'll do it in the morning. I'm too tired now." And this was the moment that would change everything. In her exhaustion, in her carelessness, Femi forgot the most important promise she had made to her husband. She left the pool full of water, the doors unlocked, and went to sleep. At 2 a.m. in the morning, while the house slept in the silence that follows celebration, little Priscilla woke up feeling very thirsty. The excitement of the day, the loud music, and the lack of proper meals had left her dehydrated. Priscilla wakes up, rubbing her eyes. Then she whispered, "I'm so thirsty. Mommy, I need water." She gets out of bed and walks to her mother's room. Then Priscilla gently shakes Femi. "Mommy, wake up. I need water, please." But Femi is deep asleep, exhausted from the party. And then little Priscilla raised her voice a little louder, as she calls her mom continuously. "Mommy, Mommy, I'm very thirsty." But Femi doesn't respond. She turned over in her sleep. Poor little Priscilla tried and tried to wake her mother, but Femi was in the deep sleep of exhaustion and perhaps alcohol. The child's small voice could not penetrate her mother's slumber. Then Priscilla said to herself, "Maybe I can get water myself. Daddy showed me where the cups are." She then walks to the kitchen and gets a glass cup and was looking for where to get water. If only she had gone to the kitchen tap. If only she had remembered her father's warning. But in the darkness of the night, with her mind clouded by thirst and sleepiness, little Priscilla saw the pool glimmering in the moonlight through the open sliding door. But what happened next was the tragedy that no parent should ever have to endure. Little Priscilla, with her glass cup in hand, approached the pool that her father had feared, that her mother had insisted upon, and that now waited like a silent predator in the night. As little Priscilla approached the pool, she then said to herself. The water looks so clean and nice, just like the water Daddy gives me. She kneels by the pool's edge, trying to reach the water, but the pool's edge was slippery from the earlier party. As Priscilla leaned forward to fill her cup, her small foot lost its grip on the wet tiles. She fell into the pool, struggling to survive, and was screaming, "Help! Mommy! Daddy! Help me!" The child fought bravely, as children do. She kicked, she flailed, she called out with all the strength in her small lungs. But the house slept on. Her mother, exhausted from her party, heard nothing. The friends, deep in sleep, heard nothing. For what felt like eternity but was perhaps only minutes, little Priscilla fought against the water that filled her lungs, fought against the pool that had been built for pleasure but became an instrument of death. And then, everywhere was silence. The pool that had sparkled with laughter just hours before now held the still, small body of an innocent child. The water that was meant to bring joy had taken the most precious gift God had given the Adebayo family. Morning came to the Adebayo mansion as it always did, with the Lagos sun streaming through the windows. But this morning would be different from all others. Femi wakes up, stretching her body, and was yawning. She then checked her phone, and it was 8 a.m. already. She said, "Oh, I slept so well." She then remembers her daughter and said to herself, "Priscilla must be hungry. Let me go check on her." She then walks to Priscilla's room and finds the bed empty. Femi began to call, "Priscilla? Princess, where are you?" She searches the house, but couldn't find her daughter Priscilla. She then went to her friend's room, Betty and Kemi, who were just waking up, and said to them, "Have any of you seen Priscilla?" Betty, who was yawning, replied her, "No, we just woke up. Maybe she's in the kitchen." Femi searches everywhere, kitchen, living room, bathrooms. Femi began to panic, creeping into her voice. "Priscilla, this isn't funny, baby. Where are you?" And then, as if drawn by a terrible instinct, Femi's eyes turned toward the sliding door that led to the pool. The door she had left open. The pool she had left full. Femi walks slowly toward the pool area, whispering, "No, no, please God, no." She reaches the pool and sees her daughter's lifeless body floating in the water. She screamed, "Priscilla! No, no, no." She then jumps into the pool, pulling her daughter out, and was sobbing hysterically, "Wake up, baby. Wake up. Mommy's here. Please wake up." Femi said, but it was too late. The damage was done. The precious gift, the miracle child, the only daughter they could ever have, was gone. She quickly rushed her daughter to one of the best hospitals in Lagos. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what every mother's heart already knew. Little Priscilla was gone. And now came the most difficult task of all, telling a father that his precious daughter was dead. Femi was devastated, holds the phone with shaking hands. She was barely able to speak as she said, Ade, you need to come home." Ade, who is in London, cheerfully said, "Good morning, darling. How are you and Priscilla? I was just thinking about you both." But Femi broke down in tears and said, "Ade, she's gone." Ade was confused for a moment and then replied, "Gone? What do you mean gone? Who's gone?" But Femi was sobbing hard and her response was, "Priscilla, our baby, she's dead, Ade. She drowned in the pool." There was a long silence on the phone call. Ade replied, "What did you just say?" Femi began to say, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I left the pool full. I was sleeping. She was thirsty. I'm so sorry." Ade screamed and said, "And no, not my daughter. Not my Priscilla." Across thousands of miles, Ade's heart shattered into pieces that would never be whole again. The successful businessman, the caring husband, the loving father, reduced to a broken man by a single phone call. 2 days later, Ade returned to Lagos on the first available flight. But the man who left for London was not the same man who returned. Grief had aged him beyond his years. Ade enters the house, looking devastated. Femi approaches him carefully and said, "Ade, I'm so sorry. I know you can never forgive me." Ade looks at her with eyes full of pain and anger. But Ade's voice was cold and broken. Then he said to Femi, "Show me where it happened." They both walked to the pool area. Ade stares at the pool for a long moment. And then he said, "This pool. I never wanted this pool. I knew it was dangerous, but you insisted. You pushed and pushed until I gave in." Femi began to cry and she said, I know. I was selfish. I was careless." Ade turned to face her and said, "Careless? Our daughter is dead, Femi. Our only child. The only child we could ever have." He breaks down, falling to his knees. "She came to you for water, didn't she? Our little girl was thirsty, and instead of helping her, you were sleeping off your party," Ade said. But Femi began to cry uncontrollably and said, "I tried to wake up. I was so tired." Ade stood up and his voice was filled with anger. Then he said, "Tired from what? From partying? From ignoring your responsibilities? From breaking every promise you made?" The pain in that house was unbearable. Two parents, united in grief but divided by blame, stood by the pool that had destroyed their lives. 1 week later, little Priscilla was laid to rest on a beautiful Lagos morning, surrounded by family, friends, and a community that mourned the loss of such a precious life. The funeral was heartbreaking, with many unable to contain their grief. The pastor at the graveside began to say a final prayer for little Priscilla. "We gather today not just to mourn, but to remember the joy that Priscilla brought to this world. Though her time was short, her impact was great. We prayed that may her soul rest in peace." The crowd answered amen. But Ade couldn't say a word. He didn't believe what was happening. He stands stoically, while Femi, his wife, is barely able to stand. Mama Adebayo, who was at the graveside, whispered to a relative and said, "That poor child. If only her mother had listened to wisdom instead of chasing after worldly pleasures." The relatives at the graveside began to question what will happen to Ade and Femi marriage now. But Mama Adebayo's heart was filled with tears. Then she responds, "Sadly, some wounds are too deep to heal. Some mistakes are too great to forgive." As the earth covered the small coffin, it also buried the dreams, hopes, and future of the Adebayo family. The laughter that once filled their mansion was silenced forever. 1 month later, the mansion became a house of silence and sorrow. Ade could barely look at his wife, and Femi was consumed by guilt and regret. Ade went to sit in Priscilla's room, holding her favorite teddy bear. Ade began to say, "I'm so sorry, princess. Daddy should have protected you better. I should never have built that pool." Femi then appears in the doorway and said to Ade, "We need to talk." But Ade was not looking at her. He then replied, "What is there to talk about, Femi?" Femi responded and said, "We need to talk about us. About our marriage. About how we move forward." Ade looked at her with anger in his eyes and said, "Move forward? How do we move forward from this? How do I forgive the woman whose negligence killed my daughter?" Femi broke down in tears and said, "She was my daughter too. I loved her too. I never meant for this to happen." Ade stood up and said, "But it did happen. Because you chose your phone over your child. You chose your parties over your responsibilities." The marriage that had once been filled with love and laughter was now poisoned by grief and blame. 2 months later, Ade began to pack his belongings, because every corner of his house reminds him of what he has lost, and why he lost it. Femi became desperate, and was crying and pleading to Ade, "Please don't leave me, Ade. I need you. We can work through this. We can heal together." Ade stopped packing his belongings and said, "Heal? How do we heal from this? Every time I look at you, I see that night. I see your carelessness. I see our daughter's death." Femi responded, "But I've changed, Ade. I threw away my phone. I don't go out anymore. I spend every day thinking about what I did wrong." But Ade then told her, "It's too late for you to change now, isn't it? Priscilla needed you to change when she was alive, not after she's dead." He picks up a framed photo of Priscilla and shouted angrily, "She was 6 years old, Femi. 6. She had her whole life ahead of her. She trusted us to protect her and we failed." Femi responded with tears in her eyes and told him, "I failed. Not you. You were a good father." Ade looked at her with pain and said, "But I enabled your negligence. I built the pool despite my better judgment. I left her with you despite knowing your habits." In that moment, both parents realized that blame was not a path to healing. but a cycle of destruction that would consume what remained of their lives. 6 months after the tragedy, Ade sought counseling from his mother, the wise Mama Adebayo. Mama Adebayo, holding her son's hands, said to him, "My son, I have watched you carry this pain for months. When will you allow healing to begin?" Ade broke down in tears and replied, "How can I heal, Mama? My daughter is gone forever." Mama Adebayo began to console him as she said, "Priscilla is with God now, and her spirit wants you to find peace. The living must not be destroyed by grief, or the dead will have died in vain." But Ade tried to speak but couldn't, because his heart was heavy with grief. Femi made terrible mistakes, yes, but destroying her completely will not bring Priscilla back. Sometimes, my son, tragedy comes to teach us about the value of what we have while we have it. Mama Adebayo told her son Ade. Ade eventually forgave his wife, not because her actions were forgivable, but because hatred would have destroyed what remained of his life. They live separately now, united only by their shared grief and their commitment to preventing such tragedies for other families. Femi has devoted her life to speaking at parenting seminars, sharing her story as a warning to other mothers. She has never touched social media again, and spends her days in service to orphan children, trying to fill the void left by the daughter she failed to protect. The mansion still stands on Banana Island, but it is no longer a home. It is a house filled with memories, regrets, and the echo of a little girl's laughter that will never return.